I'm Catherine Blake. I'm 36 years old and live in Portland, Oregon, with my husband, Ethan, and our 8-year-old daughter, Mia. Last week, Ethan suddenly passed away from a heart attack while at work. I still can't believe it's real. Everything happened so fast, my brain couldn't keep up. That morning, Ethan woke up early, like usual, made coffee, toasted some bread, and left a sticky note next to Mia's milk. "I'll be home early tonight. Don't forget the blue dress you picked for your performance." He kissed my forehead before heading out, leaving behind that familiar minty scent and the kind of smile that made people feel safe. I remember Mia's eyes lighting up as she said, "Dad promised, okay? I'm the star today." I nodded, smoothing down her hair, my heart full. Just hours later, my world collapsed. It was exactly 11:20 a.m. when I got the call from Lauren, Ethan's assistant. Her voice was shaking. "Catherine, Ethan, he collapsed in a client meeting. They're taking him to St. Vincent. It's serious, critical." I dropped the phone. Cold spread from my feet up to my chest. I immediately called the neighbors and asked them to pick me up from school, then rushed to the car. I don't remember how many red lights I ran. My hands were trembling the whole time, and I kept whispering, "Please, no, please not this." By the time I arrived at the hospital, the doctor just shook his head. Ethan had died at 11:18 a.m. They said the heart attack hit too fast. There wasn't time to save him. I stood frozen before his body. The man who'd asked me that very morning to grab more maple syrup. Now lying still, cold, gone. I don't know how long I cried, but when I stepped out of that freezing room, the only thought in my mind was to call my parents. I needed them. I needed a hug, comfort, someone to say, "You'll be okay." I called my mom. It rang 5 times before she picked up. Laughter and music burst through the line, numbing me instantly. "Hello? Make it quick, honey. We're having a blast over here," she said, clearly in party mode. I tried to stay calm. "Mom, Ethan's gone. He had a heart attack? At work?" There was a pause, then a nervous chuckle. "You're joking, right? That's not funny. It's Lindsay's birthday. We're having dinner at a Mexican place. Can this wait until tomorrow?" I couldn't breathe. "Mom, I'm not joking. I just saw my husband's body. He's really gone?" "Oh my God," she sighed. "But Lindsay planned this for weeks. Are you okay? I'll come by tomorrow, all right? Now's not the best time." Not the best time. I ended the call before she could finish. I collapsed onto the hospital hallway floor, gripping my phone, tears flooding my face. In the worst moment of my life, all I had wanted was an embrace. But all I got was a careless brush off. My mother chose birthday cake and margaritas over coming to me. No one held me that day. There was only silence, and the tick-tock of the hospital clock clawing at my chest. That night, Mia and I curled up in a room filled with the smell of unwashed shirts Ethan left behind. I couldn't bring myself to tell her her father wasn't coming home. I had no idea how to say the words. But one thing I knew for certain, from that moment on, I had to toughen up. Not just to survive, but to protect my daughter from the very people who were supposed to be our refuge. Ethan's funeral was held on a Saturday morning at a small chapel on the west side of Portland. The sky was crystal clear, sunlight cutting through golden maple leaves. A cruelly beautiful light on the day my heart shattered a second time. Mia and I arrived early. She wore the sky blue dress Ethan once called her real princess gown. I braided her hair just the way he used to on special days. She held my hand tightly, eyes red but resolute. Not a single tear fell from her. I, on the other hand, had to pull over 3 times just to breathe. The first to arrive were Ethan's close colleagues from the financial law firm. They brought elegant floral arrangements. A few couldn't hold back tears when they saw me. Ryan's, Ethan's supervisor, hugged me tightly before whispering, voice hoarse, he was the only one here who turned down commission to get higher life insurance for his family. Not everyone would do that. I tried to smile, but my throat tightened. Every kind thing Ethan ever did for us now weighed on my chest like warm bricks. comforting and crushing at the same time. I turned, looking for my parents. They had promised to come early to help welcome guests, but by 9:50, 10 minutes before the service, the family section was still empty. At 10:03, my phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Stuck in construction traffic. GPS says 15 minutes late. Save us some seats. Save seats? I reread it, hoping I misunderstood, but no. They were going to be late to the funeral of the son-in-law they once called America's best, and they wanted me to reserve spots. They walked in minutes after the service began. My mother's heels clacked sharply through the silence, heads turning. She wore a silver floral dress, not black. My father kept his golf outfit on, with only a token jacket thrown over it. And Lindsay, my sister, was on the phone. I held it in. They sat in the front row I'd left open. My mother bowed her head and dabbed her eyes with a tissue still creased from the packaging. I'd seen that kind of performance all my life. When the pastor invited me to give the eulogy, Lindsay leaned in to whisper to Mom, and they both glanced at their phones. I stepped up to the podium, mic in hand, voice trembling but not breaking. I spoke about Ethan, the man who never forgot to buy extra toothpaste before I asked, the dad who couldn't play soccer but watched YouTube every night to coach Mia's team. I talked about how he read bedtime stories even after 12-hour days, and I ended with his favorite line, "Family is a choice you make every day, not a part you play on weekends." I didn't look at my parents when I said it, but I knew they heard. The reception was held at our house. Ethan had remodeled the kitchen so there would be room for gatherings like this. I couldn't eat, but I greeted everyone, accepting hugs, condolences, little stories about Ethan I'd never heard before. Each one cut deep, but also helped piece him back together in my memory. Mom and Lindsay camped out on the living room couch. They didn't offer to help with tea or cleanup. My mom clutched a glass of wine, chatting with a distant cousin. I accidentally overheard her say, quietly, "I heard Ethan had a pretty big life insurance policy. Which firm handled it?" My mother turned sharply. "What did you just say?" She smiled. "Oh, nothing. Just curious, honey. You know, it's time to think ahead. It must have been a 6-figure payout." I didn't respond. A chill spread through me. Lindsay shrugged. "She means you're set now. I mean, Ethan left a lot, didn't he?" I set my glass on the counter, hands shaking. I looked at the 2 women who raised me and shared my childhood and realized they weren't really here for Ethan. They weren't grieving him. They came to see what Catherine got out of her husband's death. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in the kitchen, surrounded by cold food and wilting flowers. Mia had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching one of Ethan's old sweaters. I looked at her, then looked away. The house was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. But my spirit was no longer fragile, no longer trembling. Something had changed after that final glance with my mother today. The funeral was an end for Ethan, but it was the beginning of an awakening for me. From now on, I would no longer romanticize blood ties. If they couldn't show up with love, they had no place in the world I was building, for Mia and for myself. 12 days after the funeral, when the house had begun to empty of flowers and the half-hearted hugs from neighbors, my parents showed up on my front porch. No warning, no message, just knocking on the door while I was sitting with Ethan's life insurance payout breakdown. I opened the door in an old pair of pajamas, my hair tied back in a loose bun, dark circles under my eyes. My mom wore a beige cashmere sweater clutching a large purse. My dad still had his usual banker look, crisp white shirt, blue tie, polished leather shoes. The kind he wore when visiting financial advisors. "We're just stopping by for a bit," my mom said quickly. "We need to talk, Catherine. Is Mia home?" "She's at school," I replied. I didn't invite them in, but they walked inside anyway, like this place had always been theirs since I was in 4th grade. I set my water bottle down on the table. They took the seats across from me like this was some formal family meeting. Not the first time we'd seen each other since Ethan's funeral. I knew they hadn't come to check on my well-being. My mom glanced around the living room, her eyes landing on the built-in speaker system Ethan had painstakingly installed over a week. My dad cleared his throat, like queuing up a rehearsed speech. "Catherine, we know you're exhausted. Losing Ethan was a shock, no one denies that, but you need to think ahead. For Mia, for the family. I sat still, my hands clasped tightly. What are you saying? I asked. Well, your mom and I are getting older. Medications aren't cheap, pensions barely cover essentials. Your mother's having serious knee trouble. Doctor says surgery's needed. He paused. And Lindsay, she's still struggling with her art studio. No one buys paintings anymore. It's stressful for her. I exhaled slowly, still silent. Ethan! My mom jumped in. He was responsible. He made sure you and Mia would be taken care of, right? My mother left. Enough. Yes, I said flatly. Then, my dad leaned forward, voice low and steady. We think it's only fair that 50% of that life insurance goes to the extended family. Half for you, Mia, and your mother. Half for us, your parents, and Lindsay. It's reasonable. No one loses. I let out a laugh, dry, empty of humor. Excuse me? You might not agree, he went on, but consider this, Catherine. We paid for your college, your first car, the down payment on your first apartment. Don't you think it's time to give back? By using my husband's death benefit, I asked, voice barely above a whisper but sharp as glass. That money's meant for Mia's education, for her to have a good life. It's what Ethan wanted, not for my mother, not for Lindsay, who, by the way, still doesn't hold a stable job at 32. You're overreacting, my mom said, placing a hand on my shoulder like comfort. Families share. We're not asking for everything, just half. Ethan would have agreed. Don't use Ethan to justify this, I cut her off. He'd be furious. My dad's face darkened. He pulled a folder from his inner coat pocket. Pages of spreadsheets neatly printed. This outlines the division based on living needs, medical costs, future planning. Read it before deciding. I stood. No need. The answer is no. Not half, not a quarter, not 1 cent. Catherine, that's selfish, my mother snapped. How can you call yourself family? If being family means giving up my daughter's future for people who didn't even show up for us when it mattered, then I'd rather have no family at all. My dad's face turned red. You're destroying what's left of this family. No, I said, opening the door. You did that when you arrived late to Ethan's funeral, checked your phones during the service, and now come here demanding a share of a man who's barely been gone 2 weeks. No one walked out of my house with their head held high that day. When the door slammed behind them, something inside me cracked. And somehow, it also settled. It was the clean break I hadn't known I needed. 3 days after my parents left the house in that chilling silence, I thought things would quiet down. I was wrong, and the first to suffer from their greed wasn't me. It was Mia. That Wednesday, I picked her up early from school because of a headache. She unbuckled her seatbelt without saying a word, her face tight, lips pressed together like she was holding something in. When I opened the back door to help her with her backpack, she suddenly turned and asked, Mom, did Grandma and Grandpa try to take Dad's money? I froze. Who told you that? She looked down, her voice shrinking. At the funeral, when you were talking to Mr. Ryan, I went to find tissues. I heard Grandpa talking to Uncle Michael. He said Ethan left a massive insurance policy. It's time Catherine thinks of the family. My chest tightened. Mia went on, her eyes turning red. At first I thought I misheard, but on Monday, during art class, Grandma came by and gave me one of her old bracelets. Then she asked, Has your mom said anything about your dad's money? I told her no, and she said, Then don't say anything to anyone. This is grown-up stuff. I had to grip the car door to stay upright. Why would they do that to me? Mia looked up, tears falling. I thought they loved Dad. I thought they loved me too. I dropped to my knees, pulled her into my arms, stroking her hair with a tight throat. Mia, some people come into our lives because they love us. Others show up only when they want something. I'm sorry you had to see the ugly side of grown-ups so soon. She said nothing, just buried her face in my shoulder. We sat on the front steps in the soft evening light, wrapped in a heavy silence. For the first time, I felt like a part of her childhood had been stolen, not by choice, but by people who forced her to grow up too early. That evening, Mia ate dinner quietly, didn't ask about homework, and didn't beg for cartoons like she usually did. After the dishes, I found her in the living room with her sketchbook and a box of colored pencils. "What are you working on?" I asked. "Something important," she replied without looking up. I didn't press. Even though I was curious, I respected the space she needed. When she went to bed, I saw the unfinished drawing on the table, scrawled in wobbly block letters at the top. "The people who really love me." In the drawing, Mia, Ethan, and I were having dinner together. By the window stood a man in a blue cap. I recognized him instantly, Marcus, Ethan's younger brother. I hadn't spoken to Mia much about Marcus, who lived in Colorado but called occasionally. But maybe, for a child, a single genuine, "How are you feeling today?" was enough to feel real love. I sat down and typed a message to Marcus. "If you're free, could you come to Portland for a few days? Not just for me, but for Mia. She's aged years in just a few days, and I'm doing my best to keep her believing in good people." He replied in under 10 minutes. "Don't worry. I'll fly out tomorrow night. I promise, Ethan, if anything happened, I'd be there for the two of you." I broke down, not from anger this time, but from relief. For the first time in days, I didn't feel entirely alone. The next morning, as I prepped breakfast, Mia walked into the kitchen with a handmade envelope folded from craft paper. "This is for you, but you can't open it yet. Not until the right time." "When's the right time?" "When they come back. I think they will, right?" I nodded, swallowing a lump in my throat. "Maybe. And if they do, I promise you won't face them alone." Mia nodded back, then said something I'll never forget. "If they come back, I have something to say too." Dad said, "Sometimes being brave doesn't mean fighting. It means telling the truth, even if you're the smallest person in the room." I looked at her, my heart aching with pride. She was only 8, but in that moment I saw the brightest reflection of Ethan in her. Steady, kind, and unshakably brave, even when standing alone against those who shared her blood. Saturday afternoon, I received a text from my father. "Sunday, 2 p.m., family meeting at the house. Something important to discuss. Bring a family spirit, not resentment." I read it 3 times, still unable to grasp what they were thinking. After everything, demanding a share of my husband's life insurance less than 2 weeks after the funeral, hurting my daughter, they still believed I would show up, listen, and reconsider? I planned not to go. I even typed a refusal, but then I looked over at Mia, sitting at the table, coloring a sheet of paper and carefully placing it into a yellow envelope. She looked at me, strangely calm. "Mom, I want to go. Dad wouldn't want us to hide." I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I knew Mia needed to say something. Not for me, for herself. We arrived on time. The house I grew up in felt more unfamiliar than ever. Parked outside were Uncle Charles's silver SUV and Aunt Linda's sedan. Dad opened the door, wearing a forced smile over tight nerves. Mom stood in the kitchen, pouring orange juice like it was a regular Sunday brunch. The living room had been rearranged. A large couch faced the coffee table, surrounded by 4 chairs like we were about to enter some kind of family tribunal. Lindsay sat beside Mom, fidgeting with her phone. As Mia and I walked in, every eye turned to us. I looked around and spoke bluntly. "If this is about Ethan's insurance money, we won't be staying long." "Catherine," Dad said, overly calm. "This is about honest discussion. No one's pressuring you." "Then let's be honest." I sat down, pulling Mia close. "We've thought this through," Mom began. "We want to propose something fair. 40% of the insurance goes to us, 10% to Lindsay to start her art studio. The remaining 50% stays with you and Mia." "Fair?" I laughed. "Fair to whom? Lindsay, who's never held a job longer than 6 months? Or to you two, who showed up late to the funeral and asked about the insurance while I was arranging my husband's burial?" "You're insulting everyone here," Lindsay snapped. We're here for family. You're just hoarding money. Before I could respond, Mia quietly stood and pulled the yellow envelope from her small purse. The room fell silent. I'd like to say something. Mom frowned. This isn't something kids should be involved in, Mia. If it's not right for me to hear, Mia said calmly, then adults shouldn't have said it in front of me. She unfolded a paper creased in thirds. On the front, written in bold red crayon, family love invoice. Mia took a deep breath and read aloud. It was at the night Mom and I found out about Dad. $0. Not present, all to check on me when I cried every night. $0. No calls. Tell me everything will be okay. $0. No one said that. Bring gifts just to ask if I miss Dad. Then ask Mom about money. $0. Present but not for me. Real love, priceless but not present. The room went still. I heard Mom swallow hard. Lindsay put her phone down, her face burning red. Dad couldn't meet Mia's eyes. I just want to say, Mia finished, folding the paper, I still love Grandpa, Grandma, and Aunt Lindsay. But if love only shows up when there's money, that's not the kind of love I need. I squeezed her hand, overwhelmed with pride. We'll be going now, I said, standing up. Catherine, Mom stammered, are you cutting us off? No, but from now on, if you want to see your granddaughter, you'll have to relearn how to be grown-ups, not people demanding money while their daughter is still in mourning. Mia and I walked out of that house like stepping off a stage we'd been forced to perform on for years. And for the first time since Ethan passed, even though the grief remained, we had reclaimed something worth more than any insurance payout: our dignity. Monday morning, after the family meeting, I woke up in a haze of exhaustion and relief. Mia had fallen asleep early the night before, saying nothing after delivering her emotional invoice to the room. But I knew something inside her had shifted, just like it had inside me. We weren't the silent ones anymore. The first thing I did was call Ethan's attorney, Valerie Myers, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her early 40s who had helped us draft Ethan's will and set up Mia's scholarship fund. Catherine, you did the right thing by calling early, Valerie said after I explained the family ambush. I'll draft a formal notice stating that all of Ethan's assets are under legal protection and any attempts to interfere could be considered financial harassment. I also want a firm boundary in place, I said clearly. I don't want them around Mia. No calls, no gifts, no surprise visits. Do you want me to send a cease and desist? Not yet, I sighed, but be ready. I hung up and blocked every number. My parents, Lindsay even, Aunt Linda. Who had the nerve to message me afterward? Family is about sharing, not dividing. I hope your little girl doesn't get hurt by your stubbornness. I didn't respond. I didn't delete it either. I saved every message, converted them into PDFs, and forwarded them to Valerie, as she advised. That same day, I called Mr. Daniels, the principal at Mia's school. I need your staff to strictly enforce pickup protocols. No one outside my approved list is allowed to approach Mia, even if they claim to be family. Unless I give written permission, keep them away. He agreed immediately, and I could tell he'd already heard whispers. We'll heighten gate security and notify the entire faculty, he reassured me. Mia's a bright, well-loved student. We'll keep her safe. I felt a bit lighter, but deep down, I remained on edge. With my parents, greed always came dressed in morality. They'd wear the label of caring grandparents if it gave them leverage to access any part of my life or my daughter's. 2 days later, a large cream envelope was slipped under our door. No postage, no return address. Inside was a typed letter signed Bradley and Elaine Whitaker. My parents' full names, written in their classic, guilt-drenched civility. We are deeply hurt by your reaction to what was meant as a gesture of goodwill. Denying grandparents access to their grandchild may constitute grounds for legal action if continued. We love Mia and only wish to fulfill our rightful role in her life. Please reconsider before things escalate. I didn't feel anger, just fatigue. They never apologized. They only rebranded old control in new language. I photographed every page and sent it to Valerie. If this goes on, I texted her, I want to escalate, restraining order if needed. She replied with one line, I'm on it. They've just drawn the line for us. Mia, meanwhile, never brought up her grandparents all week, until Friday night. As I folded laundry, she came into my room, hugging the bear pillow her dad had given her. Mom, if they come back, what will you do? I sat down and patted the bed. I won't let anyone hurt you again, no matter who they are. But what if they really apologize? I looked into her eyes. There was still hope. Some part of Mia still wanted to believe in the good version of family. And I couldn't take that from her. If they're sincere, I'll listen. But listening doesn't mean instant forgiveness. And forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. She nodded, then asked one last question before curling into me. Do I get to choose not to forgive? I wrapped her in my arms. Yes, and you also get to choose not to let them back in, if they don't deserve it. That night, I silenced my phone, turned off all notifications, even shut down the Wi-Fi. I reopened our photo archive. Wedding pictures, Ethan cradling newborn Mia, our summer trip to Crater Lake. Amid the threats, power plays, and letters masked as family concern, I realized I'd begun building a different kind of world. 10 days after the threatening letter from my parents, Marcus showed up on my porch one rainy afternoon, soaked coat, suitcase in hand, and a calm look in his eyes like he'd never left Portland. I thought you said you'd be back in the summer, I asked, still not believing it. Plans changed. The university in Denver granted me leave for the next semester, and your brother made it clear, if anything happens, be there with them, Marcus said firmly. So I'm here for at least 6 months, hopefully longer. I didn't say a word. I just nodded. Sometimes thank you feels too small for the weight someone's willing to carry. That night, Mia practically exploded with joy. She clung to Marcus like she'd found her father again. And in a way, she had. There was something of Ethan in Marcus. The way he walked, his laugh, even his ritual of making hot cocoa for kids with extra whipped cream. Uncle Marcus, do you know how to fix bikes? Mine's been all messed up for days. I do, and I can also make star-shaped pancakes. Want to trade? He winked. From that moment, our home no longer felt like a cave of grief. Having another adult around changed everything. Mia clung to me less, and I finally had time to breathe, to think, to sort through the mountains of Ethan's papers. Marcus didn't ask questions. He didn't offer cliché comforts. He simply stayed. When I cried, he didn't preach. He just handed me a tissue. When I exploded over yet another email from my family, Lindsay using a backup account, he calmly said, You don't have to respond right away. You have the right to a life that isn't ruled by other people's rage. But Marcus wasn't the only steady hand. There was another source of comfort. My in-laws, Walter and Helen, from Tacoma, Washington. They called every evening, never intrusive, always asking just one thing. Catherine, how are you today? Did Mia smile? 3 weeks after the funeral, they drove nearly 4 hours to visit us. They brought food, photo albums of Ethan as a boy, and a tiny dress Mia had worn at age 3, one Helen had saved like treasure. I used to think mother-in-law dynamics would be the hardest part of grieving Ethan. I was wrong. Helen never tried to control anything. She just cooked, peeled fruit, and quietly placed flowers into the same crystal vase Ethan gave me one Valentine's Day. Ethan once said, if anything ever happened, you and Mia were his only priority. We didn't just lose a son, Catherine. We lost a piece of our hearts. But if we can still love Mia, then we haven't lost everything. I couldn't hold back tears. Walter didn't speak much, but that entire afternoon, he and Marcus repaired the backyard fence, the same one Ethan had always said he'd fix but never got around to. That evening at dinner, Mia pulled out a crayon drawing and handed it to Helen. I drew Grandpa, Grandma, and Daddy. Daddy's sitting on a cloud watching us. You and Grandpa are holding me and Mommy down here. Helen broke down, hugging Mia tight. My granddaughter is just as brave as her dad. From that day on, Walter and Helen started visiting Portland every weekend. They never overstayed, never intruded, but somehow they always showed up exactly when I felt like I might fall apart. Marcus rented a small apartment 3 blocks from our home. He still came over every Tuesday and Friday to cook, took Mia to art class on Saturdays, and sometimes just sat beside me, reading in silence. No one said it aloud, but we all knew. A new kind of family was forming. Not perfect, not the same, but real and steady. One day I asked Marcus, "Don't you regret leaving a stable job in Denver?" He shrugged. I had a brother I admired. He always chose family over career. Now I'm just doing the same, and Mia deserves a man who doesn't disappear. I turned away to hide my tears. As night fell, I looked around the house bathed in kitchen light. Mia chattering about school with Helen, Marcus brewing tea, Walter checking the locks. And I realized losing Ethan left a wound that may never close. But in its place, something else was being stitched, thread by thread, with loyalty, kindness, and chosen love. And sometimes the best kind of family isn't bound by blood. It's made of those who stay, who love freely, and never ask for anything in return. One April morning, just as the tulips in the garden were blooming, I received a hand-delivered letter and a postcard of Cannon Beach, where Ethan once took us camping when Mia was 4. The envelope bore no legal emblem, no threats, no bolded headlines, just my mother's familiar handwriting, Elaine Whitaker. And the first line that made me sit down. "My daughter, if your heart is still open enough to read this, let this be a first attempt. Not to demand, but to understand." I didn't expect much. After months of hostile texts, disappointment letters, and Lindsay's vague posts accusing me of destroying the family, I thought I had every reason to keep the last doors shut. But I read it anyway. Not for them, for myself. I needed to know if the silence of the past 3 months was surrender or reflection. My mother wrote about the night of the family meeting when Mia read her emotional invoice, how it left her without excuses. She shared that she saw a therapist for the first time, something my father resisted for weeks before joining her later. She didn't ask for forgiveness, she simply wrote. "If I get another chance, I want to start over, not with you, but with my granddaughter, because she deserves more love if the person giving it has finally learned how to love right." I sat with that letter for hours. No tears, no anger, just silence. Later that afternoon, I printed it out and handed it to Marcus. "What do you think?" "I think if this is an act, they deserve an Oscar. But if it's real, maybe Ethan would want you to try once." I didn't reply right away. 2 days later, a bouquet of white daisies arrived at my door. No card, no sender, but I knew. It was Ethan's tradition. He sent them every year on the anniversary of when I started working at the old architecture firm. Mia found them first. "Who sent these, Mom?" "I'm not sure. Maybe Grandma and Grandpa?" She paused. "Did they say anything?" I shook my head. "I think they're trying to speak differently now." That night, Mia left a note on the kitchen counter. "If Grandma says sorry to you, then I'll see her. But you come with me. Only once. Is that okay?" I smiled and folded the note like a tiny treaty, one I vowed to protect. I emailed my mother. "You may see Mia once at Cornerstone Cafe this Saturday afternoon. No talk of money, no talk of the past. If it goes well, maybe there will be a second time." Saturday afternoon, the cafe was quieter than usual. I chose a window seat. My mother arrived 5 minutes early. No heavy makeup, no flashy clothes. Just a woman in late middle age with a small purse and cautious eyes. When she saw Mia, she smiled, for the first time, without expectation or performance. "Hi, Mia." "Hi, Grandma." Mia pulled out a chair for her. I stayed silent, watching. They talked about art class, her favorite scones, and the neighbor's dog that barked every morning at 7. No one mentioned Ethan. No one brought up the broken family. No apologies were spoken out loud, but there were silent moments. Spaces that felt like apologies being rebuilt with action instead of words. Afterward, Mia held my hand walking back to the car. I didn't know Grandma could be that quiet, but I like that kind of quiet. I didn't respond. I just held her hand tighter. A week later, my father sent a letter, shorter but clearer than ever. You were right, I was wrong, no excuses. If allowed, I want to be a grandfather, not someone trying to claim a share. If not, I understand. I haven't replied yet, I need time, but for the first time in months, I unblocked his number. Because sometimes, forgiveness doesn't begin with forgetting, it starts with a door cracked open, just enough for light to slip through, and the rest, they must walk through on their own feet, with the truth in their hands. Catherine's story is a reminder that not everyone labeled family deserves a place in your life. When loss strikes, truth surfaces. Who cares, and who just benefits? Setting boundaries isn't ungrateful. It's protecting your peace and your child. In real life, sometimes you have to walk away from toxic ties to make room for real connection. Forgiveness may come, but only when change is shown through action, not words. What are your thoughts on Catherine's journey? Would you have made the same choice in her place? Share your perspective in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and life.